Good evening. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Parrots. Today is June 3rd. We're in our regular Wednesday night live Bible study class on iVlog, ivlog.tv. On Wednesday nights, we're studying the Old Testament, and at the present time, we're in the divided kingdom. There were three kings: Saul, David, and Solomon. That was known as the period of kings. And this is the divided kingdom. When Solomon died, his son became king of 2 tribes in the south, and his servant became king of 10 tribes in the north. When we finished last Wednesday, I had done, now first of all, let me explain. We're studying, if you're following us, a chronological Bible, which means we're studying things, events, in the order in which they occurred, not the order in which they're in the Bible. I should also explain, I'm looking on my monitor, what you're seeing are 3 babies. The oldest is 4 weeks, and the youngest is 3 weeks and about 6 days. And they're at a period of time where they're just coming out of the nest now. The oldest is beginning to have a little interest in the seeds. The youngest isn't. And this is the way that the parents, both father and mother, feed the babies. I have them in an aquarium, so it makes it a little easier for you to see what they're doing than if I had them in a cage. And the one that's bobbing his head, he's pretty much in the middle, or the one that is eating right now out of a dish, that is the father. And both parents feed them. And since this is evening, and since Mama stays with the babies, that one will be flying in 2 or 3 days. So he's eating, and he feeds the babies regurgitated food. And they hook up by connecting their beaks like this. The babies are so excited to hook up with Daddy that sometimes they've been today, surprisingly, they've been hooking up with each other. They have no idea what they're doing. The oldest one is a little bit interested in the seed. The rest will pick it up in a couple of days. And for about 3 weeks, maybe 4, there'll be a combination of their feeding themselves and they're being fed by the parents. Okay, so much it just dawned on me that you may not realize what's going on over here, and they're at the age now that they're fledging their wings to make sure they work. The day will come when they'll be on the edge of something and they'll take off. Then when they take off, I will clip their wings, but they need to know what flying is before you clip their wings. That way, if they're ever in trouble, they will try to fly, which is a good thing, because if they are up on something, they can't fly up and away, but they will go down, and the flapping of the wings will act like a parachute. So that idea of flying to get away from danger is a good thing. Also, the day may come when whoever winds up as permanent parents, owners of these birds, may want them flighted. And if they are, why then they need to have had that experience when they're very young of knowing what it is to flap and actually fly. When you clip the wings, you're clipping the flight wings, not the other wings, which means that they do have that safety net. And the flight wings is what gets them up in the air and gets them on going distances. they flop around on the floor and so forth a little bit, and that's okay. It's not a problem, so they're safe. All right. This is the first time I have taught the divided kingdom chronologically. I even wrote a book called The Chronological Old Testament in Spanish. You would think that I would have done it chronologically then, but I didn't. And I have not seen anybody else who has written on the subject or taught the subject that they don't do it first, usually the Northern Kingdom and then the Southern Kingdom. This is the first time I've done both together. Now, we were going along pretty well both together, but we came to a period in history when the two kings, the king of the north and the king of the south, were both kings for quite a period of time. They both became kings at almost the same time, give or take a year or two. And because of the subject matter in the Northern Kingdom, where we had the best known prophet, non-writing prophet of being Elijah, one of the two people who went to heaven without dying. He went in a fiery chariot. I wanted to make sure that we gave enough attention so that we didn't lose anything. So I've got just a little bit to say to finish up. And then we're going to finish up the Southern Kingdom. And then we're going to come to a combination of the two, which is going to be very, very interesting. Now, we ended last Wednesday by talking about Naboth, a man who the King Ahab, whose wife Jezebel and he were trying to kill the prophets. We had done the bit of Elijah on Mount Carmel and the fire coming down from heaven like it did on the occasion when the temple was dedicated. And we got to where Ahab had a number of vineyards. Altogether, they made one large one. But there was one vineyard in the middle of all of his many vineyards, making one big one, that wasn't his. And he wanted it. Naboth refused to sell it to him. And King Ahab had him killed over it so that he could get the vineyard. And the last thing that Naboth said, he would not sell what had been given to him by his parents, or his father, as an inheritance. Now, that's where we ended. We have about 10 verses to do now. And we're in 1 Kings, the 21st chapter, the 17th verse. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah and said this, "Arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel," which is in Samaria. Samaria was the capital of the northern portion of Israel. "Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whether he's gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak to him, saying, In the place where the dogs lick the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood. Even, in other words, the place where you killed Naboth and dogs licked his blood, dogs will lick your blood when you die. Remember that, because we will, in the near future, come to where this comes to pass. And Ahab said to Elijah, hast thou found me, my enemy? Because the king was trying to kill all the prophets, and Elijah was the main one. They had just been on Mount Carmel together. The king was there when the fire came down. He said, I found you because you sold yourself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring evil upon you, and I will take your posterity, your offspring, and I will cut off from Ahab him all men, and it will make your house the house of Jeroboam. Jeroboam was king of the south. He said, because you killed Naboth, you will be killed. And this special thing you wanted is going to belong to the king of the two southern tribes, like the house of Baasha, the son of and the son of Ahijah. And of Jezebel, the Lord said, the dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Remember that, because we will study this in the near future, how Ahab dies and how Jezebel dies. Him that dieth of Ahab in the city of dogs, in the city the dogs shall eat, and they that die in the field, the fowls of the air will eat. So all the males, and I think it's still true. I used to give piano lessons to a family that had 5 girls, and I think 3 of them took lessons from me. And at this time I was teaching at the Bible college, so most of my students, I gave lessons in their homes. And they were trying the 6th time to get a male. What can a son do for you that a daughter can't? Both are capable of giving you grandchildren. But the girl's name does not stay the same after she's married. So your posterity then is somewhat questioned. So he says, so what's going to happen to your male children? Those that die in the city, dogs will eat them. Those that die in the country, birds, because it takes longer for a flock of birds to do away with somebody's body. And it came to pass, when Ahab heard those words, that he rent his clothes. That's what you did to show you were sad. Ahab heard those words. He ripped his clothes. He put on sackcloth upon his flesh, and he fasted. He didn't eat. He lay in sackcloth, and he went softly. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, see how Ahab humbled himself before me. God has a way of making us humble. We might be proud, we think we're all that. But talk about something so precious as your own life, or to a male, especially a king wants a son to become the next king. And all your sons, if they die in the city, will be eaten by dogs, and if they die in the country, they'll be eaten by birds. See how Ahab humbled himself before me. Because he humbled himself, I will not bring the evil in his days, but in his son's days I will bring the evil upon his house. The same thing was said of the first king. In the divided kingdom, God said, because of my love for David, Solomon's downfall will not happen in Solomon's lifetime. It will happen in the lifetime of his son who becomes king. Why? Because if you'll notice that every time somebody's name is mentioned, especially for the first time, it's mentioned whose son or daughter they are. And occasionally, in this case, Elijah the Tishbite, it would be mentioned where they're from. That's how you knew who they were talking about, if they happened to have the same name as somebody else. So, because he humbled himself, it wouldn't happen during his lifetime that his kids would die and be eaten by dogs and birds, because he humbled himself. If he would have remained proud, it would have happened, and all of his children would have died, and this would have happened during his lifetime. All right, now we are going to go back to the southern kingdom. We have been talking about the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom is the remnant, a little piece of all that was once Israel is going to last a little bit longer and go down in history. The northern part will not. The king of the north, during this period of time when these two kings, who both were kings for a substantial period of time, Ahab was king of the north. That's the part that never had a king that served God. And the part which was led off into captivity by the Assyrians and eventually lost their existence. The southern portion, where the temple was, where they had priests, where they had worship. They had worship in the northern kingdom, two calves that the king made out of gold for the people to worship. They didn't worship God. Jehoshaophat was the king of the southern portion. Now, part of the time, more often not, but some of the kings of the south served God. Many did not, but a few did. And because they did, they lasted longer and eventually went into history. Now we're going back to the beginning of Jehoshaophat. When we catch up to where Ahab is, then we'll, in a few minutes, we'll do both of them at the same time. Asa, remember, was a fairly good king. He's the one who died with a problem with his feet. Now, what we know about Asa, and remember that, because like father, like son, we've got father and son present in our live show. Asa had been a good king. But Asa slept with his fathers. That was the Old Testament way. It looks like Daddy wants to get out of there. I don't know if he can. To say in the Old Testament somebody slept with their fathers means they were buried in the family tombs. In the New Testament, they referred to it as those who were asleep, if they were Christians, meaning that they would look forward to the resurrection or the rapture. And Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead. And Jehoshaphat reigned over Judah. He was 35 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 25 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Ajuvah, daughter of Shilhi. And he walked, this is important, we're going to see this in a lot of kings, and we see this in a lot of people. Jehoshaphat reigned over Judah. Well, he walked in the way of Asa his father, and he departed not from it, doing that which was right in the sight of the Lord. He served God. He was a good king like his father. What was his one fault that's recorded? Howbeit, the high places were not taken away. For as yet the people had not prepared their hearts unto the God of their fathers. He served God. He even took away the altars in some of the pagan gods were served. But he didn't plow down the high places and level it off. And eventually the people would go back there. And Jehoshaphat the son of Asa began to reign in Judah the 4th year of Ahab king of Israel. So Jehoshaphat, now we're talking about a man who reigned for 25 years. Ahab had been king of the northern portion for 4 years. So most of the time the two kings in both their kingdoms were reigning at the same time. Jehoshaphat was 35 when he began to reign. And he walked in the ways of Asa his father. And he turned not aside from it, doing that which was right in the sight of the Lord. This is about the time that Elijah begins to minister up in the north. He did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord. Nevertheless, the high places were not taken away. Now, the reason that I'm reading the same thing twice is that it's written in 2 Chronicles 20, and it's also written in 1 Kings 22. And the remnant of the Sodomites. You remember that when Sodom and Gomorrah was rained down on, I heard a bird go down, and I thought it was one of these, but it was one of the girls from up there. They were not totally destroyed. There were a few who got off to another city, and that's who it's talking about. A remnant is a little piece of the whole thing. This is a remnant of this. And so there were just a few of the Sodomites. And that's really all it takes. it just takes a few to eventually multiply and mess up God's plan or somebody else's plan. Now, we're in 2 Chronicles 17. Jehoshaphat, his son of Asa, reigned in his son, and he strengthened himself against Israel. The north was called Israel, the south was called Judah. He placed forces in all the fenced cities of Judah. First of all, walled cities was a protection for those that lived in those cities. And then he placed military there. And the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the ways of his father David. His father was Asa. But go back a little bit farther, and you get Solomon. Go back farther, and you get David. To refer to yourself or to someone as a descendant of David, like I am my father's daughter, but I am my grandfather's granddaughter. If one or the other of them had been, let's say, president or well-known, that's who you associate yourself with. And the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the ways of his father David and sought not unto Balaam. In other words, he served God. He sought to the Lord God of his fathers, and he walked in the commandments and not after the doings of Israel. He didn't do like the 10 tribes of the north. He did like his father David, whom the Lord loved. Therefore the Lord established the kingdom in his hands, and all Judah brought Jehoshaphat presents, and he had riches and honor in abundance, almost like, remember how they did with Solomon? He was so well liked, everybody brought him presents, and that in itself made him even more wealthy. And his heart was lifted up in the ways of the Lord. Moreover, he took the high places and the groves out of Judah. His dad didn't. His dad took the altars down but left the high places. Jehoshaphat takes down the high places. And in the 3rd year of his reign, he sent his princes to Ben-Hail and to Obadiah, to Zechariah, and to Nethan, and to Mishael, to teach in the cities of Judah. This is interesting. And with them, he sent Levites. In other words, he had this big education program going. But along with the teachers, he sent Levites. And he gives the names of a number of them. And we won't test my ability to read or pronounce them. And they went with them, with Levites and 2 priests. And they taught in Judah and had the book of the law of the Lord with them. And they went about throughout the cities of Judah and taught the people. And the fear of the Lord fell upon the kingdoms of the lands that were around Judah. Where would they be? Well, to the right would be Moab and Ammon. Beneath them, south of them, would be Egypt. Not Christian, not Jewish nations. Fear here doesn't mean scared. Remember, to fear the Lord doesn't mean to be scared of him. It means to understand where he is, who he is positionally, and who we are, and to have respect for that position. So all of the non-God-serving nations around him bothered them, they had respect for them. And Jehoshaphat waxed great exceedingly, and he built in Judah castles and cities of store. And he had business in the cities of Judah. And the men of war, mighty men of valor, were in Jerusalem. And remember, there's only 2 tribes here. There's 10 in the north. And these are the numbers of them. In Judah, that's a tribe. There were captains over thousands of them. And there were mighty men of valor. There were 300,000. And then they mention another captain, and he has 2,080, or 280,000. Next to him, those that offered themselves unto the Lord were 200,000 mighty men of valor. Benjamin is the other tribe beside Judah. It's a little tiny tribe. And there were mighty men of valor. There was those with the bow, the bow and arrow, and the shield. Of them, there were 200,000. And so forth. These waited on the king. Beside them, the king put in the fenced cities throughout Judah. And Jehoshaphat had riches and honor in abundance, and joined affinity with Ahab. That's where we wanted to come to. We are now going to, there's a bunch of places here where nothing is happening there. And we are going to 1 Kings 22 and 2 Chronicles 18. We have something very interesting happening. Brother Reese, the one who did the chronological part, there's another who took part in the organization of this Bible as far as the timeline. But as the one who had to do with the timeline was Mr. Reese. Now, he has done something very interesting. Since he's got one column that's Judah and one column that is Israel, and since he has 1 Kings 22 saying almost word for word what 2 Chronicles 18 says, he's put them together. I'm, of course, only going to read one. They say so close. For example, in one case, they refer to something of the king's hands. And on the other side of the page, it speaks of the hands of the king. You tell me 2 phrases that don't say exactly that are more the same thing than this, and it's impossible. All right, so now we're talking about the north and the south. We're talking about Israel and Judah. And this is what's happening at the same time. Word for word. It's only a couple of verses here. But Jehoshaphat from the south joins Ahab in the north. And it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel. I don't know why they said came down. It's possible. I'm trying to remember. Possibly they're using this term, I went down, when, if you look at a map, they went up. Israel is north of Judah. So you go up to go there, not down. But it's possible that the altitude had something to do with it. Hi, Larry. And hi, guests. Welcome. So it's possible. Jerusalem is about 3,500 feet. And I'm thinking Sea of Galilee and the northern part, I believe, is perhaps a little lower. At any rate, I would say they went up, they went north. The king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, from the south, the 2 tribes, went up to see King Ahab, who is king in the 10 tribes of the north. And the king of Israel said to his servants in the north, know you that Ramoth in Gilead is ours, and we be still and take it not out of the land of the king of Syria? We could have that if we wanted to go take that land. This is the one in the north. Israel is saying this. So he says to Jehoshaphat, the king of the south, will you go with me to battle in Ramoth Gilead? And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, now remember, there are 10 tribes and 2 tribes, but there are the 12 tribes of Israel. They have a common ancestor. I am as thou art. In other words, we're the same. My people are like your people, and my horses are your horses. We're brothers. What's mine is yours. Now we continue in 1 Kings 22 and 2 Chronicles 18, where the 2 are talking about prophets. Why? If they're thinking about going into battle, and the 2 tribes in the south are going to help the 10 tribes in the north battle Syria. Now Syria is north, so we have geographically down here we have Judah, and then we have Israel, and then right here we have Syria. Why is he going to help him? Well, remember, king of the north, he builds 2 golden calves and wants everybody to serve them. Good old Jehoshaphat, king of the south, walked, not only did he walk in God's ways the way his father did, but his father did not do away with the high places, and he did. This is a man of God. This guy doesn't do stuff without God leading him. He wants to know, I'm not going till I talk to a prophet. You're my brother. My horses are your horses. But I want to make sure God's in this, because God's not in this, I'm not interested. This is where we are for the next 4 or 5 verses. And Jehoshaphat says to the king of Israel, inquire at the word of the Lord today. Then the king of Israel gathers his prophets together. You wonder what kind of prophets a godless king has. And he said, this is really kind of funny. The king of Israel gathered the prophets together, 400 of them, and said unto them, shall I go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And they said, the false prophets said, go up, deliver it into the hand of the king. Oh yeah, go up, and then we'll take over Syria, and it will be given to your northern 10 tribes. And all the prophets prophesied. And Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, made him horns of iron. And he said, with these horns, with these, I lost my place. Thou shalt push the Syrians until you have consumed them. You're going to take these iron horns and you're just going to push all the Syrians right out of Syria. And all the prophets prophesied and said, go to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the king's hands. Good prophecy, right? Very positive. Well, we go now to the next to 1 Kings 22. And Jehoshaphat said, king of the south, God's man, is there not a prophet of the Lord besides him? You got another preacher here. The king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, well, there is one, Micaiah, the son of Imlah, by whom we could ask him what the Lord says. But I hate him, because he does not prophesy good concerning me. I don't like this preacher. And Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. All right, let's get him. Let's see what this prophet has to say. And Micah, the prophet, and the messenger that was gone to call Micaiah spoke unto him, saying, behold, now the words of the prophets declare good unto the king. With one mouth, all 400 of them say the same thing. Let your word, I pray you, be like the word of them, and speak that which is good. Okay, prophet. 400 of them say the same thing. Now you make it 401 and we'll be happy. So he came to the king. As the Lord liveth, what the Lord says to me, that will I speak. Count on it. Whatever I say it because God has told it to me, and I'm saying it to you. So he came to the king, And the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear? And he answered, Go and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. And the king said unto him, How many times shall I adjure thee that thou wilt tell me nothing but that which is true in the name of the Lord? I've got to go back and check the other page here. Okay. And he said, I told you I want God's word. Forget what the other king told you. I want to know what God said. And he said, I saw all Israel scattered on the hills as sheep that don't have a shepherd. They have no master. Let them return every man to his house. Go in peace, go home, forget war. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, Didn't I tell you he would prophesy no good concerning me, evil? I told you. He never says anything good about me. And he said, Hear thou before the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne. That's what the prophet says. I saw God sitting on his throne. And all the host of heaven standing beside him, some on his right side, some of his left in heaven. This is what the prophet had seen. And the Lord said, Who shall persuade Ahab that he shall go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said this manner. And there came forth a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? How? How you plan to do that? He said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, You'll persuade him and prevail. Go forth. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets. And the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. But Zedekiah the son went near, and he smote Micaiah on the cheek. And he said, Which way did the Spirit of the Lord from me to speak unto thee? Where did that lion spirit go? But Zedekiah said, Behold, thou shalt see in that day, when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself, and the king of Israel, that would be Jehoshaophat. That would be Ahab, the godless one. Take Micaiah and carry him back unto Amon, the governor of the city, and unto Joash, the king's son, and say, Thus saith the king, Put this fellow in prison, and feed him with the bread of affliction, and with water of affliction, until I come in peace. And Micaiah said, If you return at all in peace, the Lord has not spoken to me. And he said, Hearken, O people, every one of you. That's what you say. If what you say were to be true, then God didn't speak to me, because what God told me is something altogether different. Now, that was the true prophecy of the true prophet. Now, the next thing we have, and it is the same for both the north and the south, and we're still in 1 Kings 22, verse 29, and in 2 Chronicles 18, verse 28, and we have almost word for word. So the king of Israel, I'm going to go over and read the other column. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaophat, the king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaophat, I will disguise myself and go into battle. But you put on your robes. And the king of Israel disguised himself, and they went to battle. King of the north, the one that doesn't serve God, he's going to disguise himself and pretend he's military. But he wants the king of the south to wear his king's robes. So the king of Israel disguised himself, and they went into battle. Now the king of Syria had commanded the captains of the chariots that were with him, saying, Fight ye not with small or great, save only with the king of Israel. He told everybody, don't go to battle with other soldiers. Only go to battle for the king of Israel. But the king of Israel is disguised as a soldier. And the king of Judah is wearing king's robes. And it came to pass, when the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, they said, he's the king of Israel. Why? Because he's wearing kingly clothes. Therefore, they compassed about him to fight. But Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him. And God moved them to depart from him. And it came to pass that when the captains of the chariots perceived that it was not the king of Israel, they turned back against him, pursuing him. And a certain man drew a bow at a venture, and smote the king of Israel, the one in the north, who pretended to be a military man, between the joints of the harness. Therefore he said to the chariot man, Turn your hand, that thou mayest carry me out of the host, for I am wounded. And the battle increased that day. Howbeit the king of Israel stayed himself up in the chariot against the Syrians until that evening. And about the time the sun went down, he died. Now, check the time here. Now we leave this joining of the king of the south and the king of the north. And for a while, just like for a while we didn't have anything happening in the south, now we don't have anything happening in the north. And where we go from here is going to be the southern kingdom of Jehoshaphat, the one who serves God. And now we're in 2 Chronicles 19. And Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, Return to his house in peace to Jerusalem. By the way, let me go back to a couple of things. I mentioned in my mailing and also in the announcement on Facebook that one prophet, one king, his prophets, he didn't want a prophet that would prophesy the truth. He wanted a prophet that said things nice about him and said things that made him feel nice and important. How many people do we have today? You know, if you read, it's been about 9 months that I've been posting things on the newer of my accounts on YouTube. So I don't have that many comments as I do on my accounts that are, about 6 years old. But you'll notice on the few that there are that some want to hear the word of the Lord. They want what the Bible says. And if there's something historical or something that has to be explained, they want to know what the Bible says. You'll notice in a couple of cases, somebody starts out and they like me. They have hope. They're going to like the message until they don't agree with it. And then I'm dumb. I know nothing about the Bible because it doesn't make them feel good. And we have, how many people are there? They're looking for a church. Move into a new town. Okay, now we're going to find us a church. I know not as many people go to church as used to, but think back of when I was young. Most people went at least 2 or 3 times a year to church. We got to find ourselves a church. Some people are looking for a Bible-believing church. If you go to a Billy Graham, or years ago, would go to a Billy Graham crusade, or you go someone that's teaching on television or that isn't right there with you, will want you, that you can go to their church. They want you to find a good church, and they'll tell you, go to a Bible preaching and a Bible teaching and a Bible believing church. Find a church that teaches and preaches the Bible. But some are looking for a church where they can feel important or where they can go and feel good about themselves. They don't want to be told that what they're doing is a sin because they don't feel good about themselves. They're not interested in the truth. They only want to feel good. I can't tell you how many people I run into. That's the kind of church they're looking for. All right, let me get back to what I was reading. Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned in peace to Jerusalem, which is Judah. And Jehu, the son of Hanani, the seer, a seer is a prophet, one who sees the future. It's another way of saying, and I think probably the reason they're using seer here instead of prophet, in some cases the word prophet had to do with what was said as opposed to what new information is being given. Remember when Saul found some prophets and he stayed with them over a short period of time and prophesied with them? The word prophecy there was not speaking about something in the future that was yet unknown, and they're telling you about it. The way prophecy was used in those times was what was said. It would be almost like reading one of the Psalms, saying great and respectful things about God was when some of those prophets got together and prophesied. That's what they were doing. It would tell you that the position in which they would be and so forth when they were prophesying. That's what they were talking about. So he's saying, Jehu the son of the seer went out to meet him and said to King Jehoshaphat, should you help the ungodly? Should you love them that hate the Lord? This is the wrath upon thee from the Lord. Nevertheless, there's some good things in you. You have taken away the groves, speaking of pagan altars, out of the land, and you've prepared your heart to seek God. And Jehoshaphat, now remember, he is a seer. And I believe that the Bible uses that word instead of prophet, because he is seeing something about the man that otherwise he wouldn't know. He's not speaking edifying things about Jehovah. And Jehoshaphat dwelt in Jerusalem, and he went out again to the people from Beersheba to Mount Ephraim, and he brought them back unto the Lord God of their fathers. He's speaking of these neighboring countries which don't serve God and make no pretense of serving him or have any interest in serving him. And he set judges in the land throughout, and he fenced the cities of Judah, city by city. And he said to the judges, take heed what you do, that you judge not for man, but for the Lord. Judge correctly. Follow God's law. Wherefore now, let the fear of the Lord be upon you. Take heed and do it, for there is no iniquity with the Lord our God, or respecter of persons, or taking of gifts. Don't take a bribe. Those of you that are judges, make a just judgment. Now, Jehoshaphat, there's something I've written in this. Okay. I wrote something down. And, all right, I guess we just haven't come to it yet. I'm almost through. Jehoshaphat restores order and worship. Moreover, in Jerusalem did Jehoshaphat set of the Levites and of the priests and of the chief of the fathers of Israel for the judgment of the Lord, and for controversies they returned to Jerusalem. In other words, they had these judges in different places. And if there was a big thing, they would come to Jerusalem, to the main ones. And he charged them, saying, thou shalt do what you do in the fear of the Lord. Be faithful and do it with a perfect heart. And what cause soever you come out of your brethren, that you dwell in the cities between blood and blood, between law and commandment, statutes and judgments. You shall even warn they that trespass not against the Lord, and so wrath come upon you and upon your brethren. Do this, and you won't trespass. And behold, Amariah the chief priest is over you in all matters of the Lord, and Zebadiah the son of Ishmael, the ruler of the house of Judah, for all the king's matters. So they had two kinds of judges. They judged in what had to do with the law of the land, but then they had priests with them to also judge the things pertaining to the Lord. Deal courageously, and the Lord shall be with the good of you. The next thing that happens, and this is a good stopping off place, even though we have a few minutes. Today is June 3/15, Wednesday. We'll start here, Wednesday night. We now have the southern portion, Jehoshaophat, King Jehoshaophat, doing battle with some of the neighboring nations that are not godly. For some reason, I keep wanting to say Christian, and of course, historically, that's not even possible. But our next group of studies, it won't be very long until we go back to Israel. Probably we may even get there next Wednesday, that we go back to the northern portion. When we go back to the northern portion, we go back to talk about the prophets. They had Elijah, and we've gone through a number of the things that Elijah did. And when we return mid-lesson next Wednesday, we will return to where Elisha, I think when we ended, we just barely mentioned him. He was a young man, and he was told he would be working with Elijah. Let me close the video now, and I'll get back to my live group in just a minute. Until our next video, blessings on you.